the record button. Nobody reminded me to do that. Oh, it is recording. Never mind. We are live. Since we do have some new folks and people will be watching this recording, let me just introduce first the Meaning Academy. I love the way that we situate ourselves here. So for those of you who don't know Dr. Viktor Frankl, one of his famous sayings is, between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in this space lies our freedom and our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our happiness. So we at the Meaning Academy will provide you the space that you need to take back your power, to stop living in reaction and choose your response and be free. That's what we're up to here. So I am Dr. Elise Cortez. For those of you who don't know me, hello, Nancy Jean. Welcome back as well. So last month, what we covered here, Dr. Dan Frankl here is one of our other co-founders. He's there. Say hello, Dan, please.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Good to see you, and welcome to the new faces.
He led us through a session on how would I respond, victim or victor. So we worked on that last month. Our other co-founder and fearless leader is Dr. B. Halevi. For those of you who don't know Dr. B, there he is. So
nice. Welcome.
Today, we want to dive into this idea of who am I? And to do that, what I've done is I'm going to just share with you just a few slides to get you thinking about some things. And I want you to be thinking about who you are in relation to your whole life in terms of your narrative, etc. I do want to put you in breakout rooms together so you can be in pairs talking about this, getting a little one-on-one love and work. So I'm going to share my screen and share a little bit about identity. I share this from the vantage point of what I did for my research when I was doing my PhD. So this is just to get you thinking about this. This is pretty just standard stuff here, but let me get this so it shows. There we go. So what I want to do with you today is I want you to be able to literally today walk away with a little bit of a clear sense of an appreciation for who you are, who you've become. I want to be able to give you a lens of possibility of seeing your life through something different or maybe even better or elevated, and to invent any possibility for the future you might want to live into and become for yourself. So just to take us through a few things here. See if I can get my slides to advance. I have a couple windows open. I might need to shut this one down. There we go. So one of the things that I really became familiar with by studying Viktor Frankl and the work that I did is the importance of really knowing our life stories. And the way that we see and tell our life stories dictates the very essence, the quality, and the trajectory of our lives. So that story is really, really important. That's part of what we're going to work on today. So the stories we tell ourselves are key to our well-being, and the way that we tell them to others indicates how they receive us, how they respond to us, and how they relate to us. So depending on how we tell the stories is indicative of our optimism, our apathy, our pessimism for the future, all these kinds of things. So that story is critical. So that's what we're going to work on today. And of course, layering in the work of Dr. Viktor Frankl, which is what the three of us stand to do with and for you, is to really help you situate meaning in your life in relation to who you are and how you navigate it. So, from this vantage point, from a logotherapeutic vantage point, we remind you through Viktor Frankl that life doesn't owe us happiness, but it offers us meaning. And again, we know that how we make meaning of our lives gives us a path to well-being or demise. That's our choice that we have been given. Humor is a fantastic tool and sometimes under-leveraged. Jared, thanks for the lesson on trying to teach me humor this morning. Sometimes I do forget. And so what I also really appreciate about Viktor Frankl's work is he reminds us that happiness, peace of mind, satisfaction, pleasure, success are all byproducts of our pursuit of meaning and having done something meaningful with our lives. They come just separately as a side benefit to all that. And I think that is incredibly useful, especially as we reflect on the contents of our lives. So from the vantage point of an identity researcher, when we think about, what's in a life, it's that narrative that you have constructed of all the events that have gone into making you who you are, all those twists and turns, the really, really pretty stuff, as well as the really, really ugly stuff. And this really speaks to who you are at your core and how you've responded to life's opportunities and, of course, the inevitable challenges that none of us get to escape from. So for our purposes, especially in this curriculum here, is it's the essence of how we've responded to whatever life has served up to us and how we interpret those things, that is, make sense of them, make meaning of them, that makes all the difference to really whether or not we feel like we're living a satisfying, fulfilling life, that we're making an impactful difference in the world, or if we're really, really struggling and just trying to feel good about ourselves and feel happy and content in what we're doing in our day to day. So I'm going to ask you to kind of think about a short little life story here. It's going to be 3 sentences, and I don't want any of those sentences to be where you were born, or how old you are, where you went to school, or your first job. They have to be more of an essence. So this idea here, some just to get you thinking about this. Some examples are, a loving mom who worked all the time, no dad. Never, I can't read this. Never really got over my lonely childhood. And that's actually 2 sentences. Here's another one. Love my life, love my dog, love my kids, a beautiful and complete life. It's fulfilling. This one, finally sober, exhausting journey, many regrets. So these are all examples of ways for you to think about your life story. But what I want to do is I want to get you in pairs, and I want you to first take just a moment here as we're together on the call, just to pen just some ideas. You probably won't be able to immediately render 3 sentences, but I want you to start the process because you could take this elsewhere from the call and practice as with other people. And then if you're going to come again next month, or not next month, later this month, you might have a more complete version. But before I get you working on this, does anybody have any questions for me? I'm going to stop the share here so we can all be together. Anybody have any questions? Three sentence life story that really describes who you are today, how you got here, whatever that flavor is, right? And so if you could just jot down, whether they're bullet points or whatever, jot those down. And then I'm going to give you just say maybe a minute to do that. And then I'm going to put you in rooms together. Anybody have any questions? Okay. So since there are 5 of you and 3 of us, I will pair one of you with me. And maybe then Dan and B, you guys can hang out but by yourselves and do this together as well. But I will pair one of you with me. Okay. You ready to go into pairs? So I'm going to have us go into these break rooms for, let's call it 10 minutes. And so the idea is you're going to share your story with the other person, maybe 8 minutes. And just see what it's like to be able to share that and let them give you some response and reaction. Your job as the listener is to just notice the content of that story. Notice how it lands on you, what it's like to be with that person as they share that story. If we get time, we want to come back and actually work on reframing and editing it as well. So let's maybe just go for 8 minutes. That would mean that it's 4 minutes each for you to kind of share and get a little bit of feedback. And then I'll bring you back and see if we'll take a few shares from the pairs to see what you might have learned or surfaced. All right. So let me get the breakout rooms going here. Let's see. Assign. So Dan. Okay. And so Zachary, you're going to be with me, and I'll have to see how to get into your room, but let me just go ahead and send you off now. Do you want to go ahead and click join on your room when it comes in? Excellent. So Zachary, okay, so Jose, you're here with me. You should do, oh, there you go. Zachary. All right. So, hey, Zachary, guess what?
Right.
You pulled the short straw. You're with me.
Oh, right. Well, I mean, this is like, free doctor time. So, yeah, I'm looking at it the other way.
All right, cool. Well, then let's hear your 3 sentences. Let's start with you.
Okay. Well, this is so ironic, Elise, because I just finished the first of two parts of my manuscript for my
Mm.
memoirs.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, this is, you're effectively asking me to summarize my book, um,
Okay.
which is perfect because that's the last step. I need to write a back cover for it too. So, my book is actually titled Creature Comforts, and the byline is my evolution from asshole to Zachary. Um, and so my first sentence would be that I am naturally a creature of comfort and habit, and that I've had this just lifelong battle with um, being happy versus having meaning and being uncomfortable out of my comfort zone. And I know that's a wrong sentence, but I've the way I've been writing, I use so many commas and hyphens. This is just how I go. So
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of the first one. Um, I've been an existentialist since childhood, recalling as young as 5 years old, just laying in bed for hours on end, contemplating the limits of the universe. And then my last sentence I would probably have to say is I fancy myself as a champion of thought and emotion for the everyman on this planet, which is to say, I feel like I've been, for whatever reason, immersed in this in my trajectory, which if you read my memoirs, you'll read through it. But I've worn a lot of hats and faces, mostly of the blue collar nature, a little bit of the white collar, enough to straddle both lines and just kind of get an appreciation for the silent majority, and see how daunting it can be a part of that, and to, I guess, trumpet the horns of the people who rise above the everyday fray just to make life happen. Yeah, I probably went way beyond the scope of this exercise because
Well, I'm
I
glad
can't,
I
I can't keep things to one sentence, and that's kind of just that's my writer in me. I can't shut that down, especially right now as I'm doing my edits. So yeah.
I love it. Thank you for sharing. No, I love it. So it's interesting that I ended up picking you. I mean, it's just not I didn't choose to pick you, but it's just kind of the way it went. So a couple of things that I heard. I think it's fascinating that you started with, creature of comfort, etc. And yet now you're doing all of this reaching and striving and so something happened along the way. And I want you to celebrate whatever happened along the way, whether it was when you lost your job or whatever it was, that catalyzed you into action. That's the first thing I want you to celebrate. The other thing that I really got to was just, you are literally a walking example of, the elasticity of a human being. Yeah, just how much we can stretch and grow. Those are a
Wow.
couple.
Thank you. And that's my title of my book. I mean, from it is an evolution from that creature that had no, or we'll just say very little regard for the emotion that comes with being uncomfortable when you're forced into discomfort, when you're a creature who just wants to be just go through life in a nice, stasis of no resistance. And that, instead of reacting that way and just letting it be get the better of me and be a person that I didn't like. Um, yeah, that is the evolution, the A to Z evolution, which I don't, whether I don't believe there's ever a finish line to anything, and God knows I still have my days where I have to work on my shit. But yeah, I mean, it's an everyday active experience, and there's no it's the omniflux of the universe that you can't just hang your hat up and call something static good and you're done and you can just sit back and enjoy it. Unfortunately, we don't really, as far as I'm concerned, we don't get that luxury until we're dead. So yeah, and it's even in my dedication, you know, I have a few different people I dedicate to, but I am dedicated to just the everyday people who are just finding a reason just to keep moving forward, which is to say finding meaning in what they're doing. I do have a question for you though. I love that slide you just put up that said, "What is life?" Um, is there any way I can use that or recapitulate it for one of my
Of
presentations?
course. Yeah.
That is amazing because I've been, in fact, I've been doing these senior legacy writing workshops for people. And I had a really knockout. I had a couple last week that were great, but one was really knockout with this legacy group. And I think that's a slide that's just the one missing thing that's kind of getting my presentation over the top is like getting them to realize the essence of why they would ever pay me in the first place to tell their story, to pass it along to their progeny or the world at large. Which I think a lot of people I'm speaking to do get that. But when the way you broke it down is perfect. I love that slide.
Okay, sure. I'm
Um,
happy to share it with you. You bet.
Thank you so much. Yeah. So yeah, I'm really glad I broke up with you. It's kind of everything I needed for right now because yeah, I just got done moving. I just got done unpacking and hanging pictures and everything, which is to say I'm done. Like after 13 months, like the Hobbit going out into the quest, I finally like made it back to my original Shire of like it's comfortable, but like again, like the big theme I learned in 13 months is like don't get too comfortable because that's not where growth happens. So like
Oh, no doubt. It's true.
it's weird. 13 months later, I've like come back to my condo and I just first of all, I love it in ways I didn't before, just from being like out in the ether for so long, but just not, I don't know, looking at it through a different lens that like, you know, this is great, but this is not like an end game at all. So, anyways,
That's awesome. I appreciate all of that, share. This is the richness for me. We're at time now, so that's a perfect time for us to set. If you want to share anything from our call or from our time, go for it. But I'm going to bring us back into the main room. I will see
sweet.
you there.
Let's do it.
Let's see here. Oh, they've got 1 more minute. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So, it's so interesting to see who comes to these kinds of things. They want substance. The people that are coming to these things are looking for substance. It's not just, the backstroke across the pond. It's, I love that. That's the essence.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. My buddy runs the men's group because he does life coaching, and I sat in on his onlines a couple times, and it's just like some of them are into big stuff, but like a lot of them, they're just trying to figure out how to better get laid or just all this shit that it's just like I can't believe this is what you guys are sitting around like pondering all day. Like
Right.
not to look down on it, but it's just like wow, those were my preoccupations when I was 23. Like,
Right. Right. Kind
oh
of
my
moved
God.
on since then. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. All right. Welcome back, everyone. All right. So that was sort of the first part of this here. Hey, B and Dan, did anybody join us while we were gone? Do you know? Could you see anything? I didn't see anybody else join. Okay. Wanted to make sure nobody got left out. Okay, well, I would love to hear what you were able to, what you got from that exercise. If you got something about your partner that you thought was interesting and something you want to share, if you learned something about yourself, saw yourself a little something differently, somebody want to share?
We need more time, Dr. Cortez.
Yes, I know, Jose. It's just starting. So we'll definitely do another round of one-on-one, but thank you, Jose, for that. I
No,
know
you're good. I'm just teasing.
I'll share a little bit. I was with Dan K, not Dan F. Thank God. And
Oh, I did put you in that room. Okay, good. I'm glad. I was thinking to myself that okay, good.
and Dan started off with a funny joke, and it was reminding me that the Jewish people have summed up 4,000 years of their journey in 3 sentences. They tried to kill us. We won. Let's eat.
That is a perfect utilization of this exercise. Okay, good.
So it predates us. It's been going on for thousands of years. But the funny and truthful part of that is, right, that there is that, how do you transform tragedy into triumph? And Dan really echoed that in his own life, personally, transforming tragedy into triumph. And now he's moving into that space professionally. And we talked about, his part of his experience of transforming tragedy into triumph. Though Dan didn't say that sentence, but I don't think I speak out of turn, Dan. Like, frame me in that way. Is that that self-transcendence. Now he's gone through it, or he's going through it. Now he can use that to help others. And he framed it in 3 sentences, but it was very elegant, and that's what I took away. Dan, did I do justice to what you were sharing?
Yeah, and so I was echoing that old Jewish joke into like how I experienced an incredible amount of suffering over the years, and that made me more sensitive to other people's pains, other people's thoughts and emotions, and culminating with me wanting to become a logotherapist and to really help people attach meaning to their suffering, to transcend.
Oh, Dan, that is beautiful. In fact, I don't know, did you happen to see the workbook in the community? Did you see the workbook for this lesson?
No.
So there is, all of you, there's all of these sessions have workbooks for them. And this one is of course called Who Am I? There are 2 pages in there. I highly recommend that you go in there, use all of the workbooks, but you have some questions there. The second page of questions is just to your point, Dan. It's really getting you to think about, a few circumstances or events that you have weathered over the years or over time. What was if there was an adversity, what was your reaction to that? What did you learn from that? Who did you become as a result of that? So you can use that workbook to further refine what you've learned about yourself and to capture it and celebrate it for sure.
Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you. Guys got the total spirit of the exercise already. Cool. Did you want to say anything else, Dan, about your exchange with Dr. B?
It was a great exchange. I never really got a chance to talk to him before, and that was really an honor. And so we were talking about what it's like to be a logotherapist and different avenues and where to learn, how to get on their feet. And so I was very happy.
Wonderful.
Connected with him.
Wonderful. All right. Somebody else want to share what you got?
I'll share a little bit about my conversation with Jose. A lot of what he'd mentioned seemed to center on his passion, and so he's passionate and he's brave, and I totally felt that, and just my impression is he's young, yet he's incredibly insightful and he has a lot of wisdom.
Jose?
That's very nice, Jared. Well, I think I talked too much, and that's why I was asking for more time. But I think Jared, based on what he shared, was also very insightful, and had a deep heart and understood kind of some of the things he has seen or things that he has experienced. He mentioned, Uvalde and kind of being in the law enforcement area. And so that, to me, that was very brave as well, to be able to kind of express that as a law enforcer and talk from that perspective. I think we shared, at least in that regard, being human is okay, and having sensitivity. We talked about being sensitive, being an okay thing, especially for men. We didn't get to dive into his 3-tier story, because we started talking about all these other topics, but I'm excited to kind of refine those 3 sentences because I think we're onto something, Darren. We're onto getting close to it.
Hmm. So you see the power of sharing your story with someone else. They see something slightly different than you do, or maybe it's a similar thing but said differently, and it expands your sense of self and who you are. And that's part of the value in doing this kind of exercise together. I've done this together actually in a room with like 150 people. So there are 75 pairs of people. Can imagine the rumbling noise going on in there, but it's really powerful. So. Given what you just said there, Jose, I'm going to put you back in pairs again to continue refining here. So I'm going to keep you in the same pair so you have the chance to better refine. So I love that.
Jose, just quick question. What is NTC?
Oh, sorry, that's my work. North Texas Commission.
Oh, I was just curious. I thought I was missing something.
Dan, Nancy, Jean, did you guys want to share anything? You don't have to, but just inviting.
Absolutely. I was honored to work with a true professional in this realm, not realizing that Nancy Jean has had quite a bit of experience and came to our dyad with a refined, succinct, and quite beautiful statement of her history leading up to being a legacy doula now. And the one, I didn't write down what she said, but I know the word light was repeated a few times and legacy was in there. And I just found it, I was paying more attention to the impact it had on me. And Nancy Jean, your words were just, again, as I said when we met, in my experience with you, so spot on and just warm and bright and like it fit with who I experienced you as. So I thought it was truly beautiful.
Did you want to respond, Nancy Jean?
Well, thank you, Dan. I've also been working with B, and a big portion of this is discover your soul thread. And we have worked on the whole process of discover your soul thread. That's my entryway into doing life review and legacy review with clients. And Zach now is doing the life review with clients. I've done the 3-sentence thing since we were young. That was our practice when I did mission trips. The 3 sentences, because we were in different communities and working with missionaries. Instead of the traditional elevator speech, we had to come down to 3-sentence where they would know us, who we were when we were going into the international communities. And then I am now using, I don't know if you've heard of it, but I actually gave B this assignment. I don't think he's completed it yet, but your memoir in 6 words.
Oh, wow.
This has been going on since I think it's national, and it's going on 2006. And it's national. They run national contests on it. Celebrities have done it. So it's pretty neat. And I'm using it as a teaching tool in a conference I'm presenting at in a couple of weeks to do the 6-word memoir.
That is so cool. I want to come. But if I'm on my best behavior, can I come too? It's such rich work. Such rich work. Okay. All right. I want to add on a little bit more information to you. Zachary asked if he could have this slide. What is live slide? I'm happy to share any of this stuff. So I will be happy to get that to you, Zachary. So what I want to do is just share a little bit more to build on, and then I want to put you back in your groups again to further refine and maybe edit your story a little bit. Maybe you've learned or seen yourself in a different light when you get back in together. But let me just come back to my slides. So as you're thinking about your story here, I want you just to kind of reflect on, what are you proud of in your story? What are you disappointed by? One of the things that I think is interesting about Dan Pink's work, he's got a book out on regret. And he says that every human has regrets unless they are young children before the age of 4, when they haven't learned how to process or experience regret, or he says sociopaths. And the point is that regret has a function, so we can actually use it to become more of who we actually want to become. So if there are disappointments or regrets, that we can actually use them to our benefit. And I certainly know that I have several regrets that I've used in my life trying to make myself a better human being, but both thinking about what you're proud of and what you're disappointed by. So when you come back here, you guys already did this thing of where what story what did their story evoke? So when you come back, if you haven't done that with the other person, when they share, you want to be able to hear and mirror back to them, what are you hearing? What's the theme that you're hearing in the story? What's standing out for you? That's part of what you're doing here. So now again, coming back to teach you more about Viktor Frankl's work in logotherapy, there's a couple tools that we have at our disposal here as we're thinking about our life stories and anything we're dealing with when it comes to life. But one of them is this notion of self-transcendence. And this is the idea of our ability to be able to put aside our own interest in service of other people. So when there's something about that that's actually incredibly fulfilling, empowering, and freeing us from our own whatever we're dealing with. And so what we know is that in order to be vital human beings, we're best when we are in service of other people, finding someone else to be in self-transcendence for or to. So thinking about how we can help. And Dan K., you and your story is a perfect illustration of that. Nancy Jean, so is yours. So being able to transcend whatever it is that is holding us to the ground in service of other people from what we've learned along the way. Another tool is called self-distancing. And this is this ability to literally step outside of ourselves and look at ourselves from the outside, maybe with a sense of humor, to be able to laugh at the mistakes that we've made or the choices that we've made that maybe were, ill-conceived, whatever it might be. But to remove this tendency that we have to dwell in our own muck and to be able to see ourselves as separate entities can be very useful when we're trying to understand ourselves, create an alternative or better future, et cetera. So a couple tools for you at your disposal. So this notion of now editing. So you've now hopefully had at least a chance to be able to have your 3 sentences. But when you come back this next time, you already know a little something about, Dr. Viktor Frankl, but being able to think about and thread in from his vantage point and his work, again, that life isn't a quest for pleasure or power, it's a quest for meaning. So what can you discern about the way that you've navigated your life so far that is meaningful for you, gives you meaning? One of the reasons I personally am a logotherapist is I fully embrace that logotherapy is an optimistic approach to life. It's a way of life, and it teaches that there are no negative or tragic aspects of life that cannot be transmuted into positive accomplishments, but for the stand we take to them, which is entirely in our control. And I love that. To me, that's incredibly empowering. Whatever life has served up to you, you have the choice and the responsibility to respond to that. And that's why I love doing this kind of work. And it certainly shows up when we think about who am I and what is our life story and our identity. So as you go along here and you come back and share again, considering a few of these gifts here, the role of gratitude. Gratitude is this really cool thing. I love this descriptive phrase. It's a psychohygienic tool. So think about that. It means it cleans your mind. It literally cleanses your mind. So being grateful for the experiences that you've had, what have they taught you? How have they catalyzed you into who you are today? Who would you be if you hadn't gone through those things? Nancy Jean, I would love sometime to hear more about your time of running. I think you said it was a brokerage firm or investment firm. I'd love to hear more about that. I can't even imagine some of the things that you had to go through and the events that you went through and how it shook you to the core to make some of the choices you did. I can't even imagine. But thinking about who would you be if you hadn't gone through all those things? How would you be prepared to serve today if you hadn't gone through those things? So from an identity vantage point, our identity is largely made up from what you've given of yourself. And there's healing power in being able to see meaning in your life and all the events that have come with it. So that's part of what our next focus is. And we get back together again in your pairs. Now the opportunity here is when you're sharing back and forth is for the other person, when you're sharing, the person narrating your story, share it so that you're trying to understand yourself and your journey, to make sense of it, see where you have response ability in your story and power in your own reaction. And the person listening, your job as the person helping here is to help hold up the mirror as to what you're hearing for themes, threads, as Nancy Jean said before, an alternative way of interpreting what they've gone through and how they're describing themselves that maybe is bigger than what they currently see for themselves. So you're contributing to each other. So I'll stop my share. I'm going to put you back in your pairs again. Before I do, though, any questions, comments, reactions? B, you always have this fantastic, thoughtful nature about you. It's always that way. So let's do this. We are at 37 minutes after the hour, 38 minutes now. So let me do this. Let me put you in there for 10 minutes. And then I'll remind you, you guys saw my messages coming through, right? 4 minutes, 2 minutes, etc. Okay, good. I'll give you 10 minutes, and that still gives us time to come back and debrief and hear. So this time we're working on editing and refining our story and looking for ways that maybe we could amplify it or extend it. Okay, go ahead and join again to your room. Oh. Okay,
Hey,
not you again.
I totally realized after listening to everybody else, I realized I just totally commandeered the last section
Yeah,
because
no, that's fine. That's what I want. So, this is meant to be of service for you. So don't give it a second thought. So, but I do want to layer in. I want to layer in and build on what you were doing, especially since you're writing a memoir. I mean, writing is really hard. It's so hard to separate and convey everything that's there, right? I mean, there's just so much. So, um. I think what I would want to ask you to kick us off here, Zachary, is what's the impetus for you that's taken you from being somebody who wanted to seek comfort to somebody who's stretching like crazy now? What is that?
that's a great question. I you know it's just this innate sense that I have been avoiding my truest self basically since I graduated college. I graduated as a philosophy major with a creative writing minor, with an open heart, inspired by Jack Kerouac and Jean-Jacques Rousseau and all those guys. And I explore this in my narrative. Being thrust into the real world, as they say, right after college, after having been, frankly, coddled in so many ways in a nice upper middle class lifestyle. We were all given educations, me, my brother, my sister, by our parents. Me essentially having to, or maybe not having to, but ultimately at some point in my early 20s saying, fuck it, like it's a great idea, being that bleeding heart inspired hippie from CSU. But like, let's get real. Like, you got bills to pay. Maybe mom and dad, or maybe not mom and dad. We'll say maybe grandma and grandpa's generation was a little more correct in saying, go get a fucking job, get realistic, be practical, do these things that are far more serviceable, and they're also uncomfortable, I would say. I don't know if there's necessarily anything comfortable about going out and earning your keep every day, as a businessman or a doctor or whatever, but ultimately surrendering my idealism to something that is just kind of mindless, something that pragmatically works in a comfortingly mindless way. Like for me, forever, it was just serving tables, which got me by and paid my bills. And it was somewhat mindless to a degree and allowed me to be comfortable in that regard. and not have to self-contemplate all the time and not have to dig into bigger, deeper, more existentialist stuff. And so I got away for the longest time. I got away with running from one, pragmatically feasible existence to the next, and each with increasing sense of just I don't know, like surface level enticement. Like I went from serving tables to growing cannabis, which was like the end all be all substance of like, I mean, my physiology loves the substance, but I've been obsessed with the plant since I was a kid. It was like, oh my God, I finally get to go be like, it's essentially like a little girl getting to grow up and be a Disney princess or something. And I did that. And it was great to a degree, but it was at best superficial. Like the best parts of it, I mean, I love, yeah, there's a lot to love about producing something with your hands and working and being blue collar in that regards. But like ultimately, my putting nicer smelling, nicer tasting, higher powered dope on the planet, there's nothing about that was intrinsically as valuable as anything I'm now pursuing. I mean, not even in the same realm.
Right.
Which is to
Wow.
say, and I being the creature of comfort that I am, I would never have voluntarily hung up those spurs and said, nah, like I was making 90K a year, living in the mountains. It was pretty easy, in that regard, it was pretty sweet stuff, but like, it was a toxic work environment. And for whatever reason, like no matter how above and beyond I went and exceeded my own professional expectations, the universe is like, believe what you will. I think you have a pretty good idea of my family and where we come from. The universe is like, dude, you got to fucking do what you're here to do. Like, enough. Like, you've spent the first 40 years of your life being very you focused. And, if I'm going to actually make that evolution all the way from A to Z, my best Z, I need to step outside myself and start pouring myself into other people. And like at the very least so far, I've been getting that out of my hospice experience in ways I didn't know, like you could find meaning and gratitude. The neurons that fire in my brain when I get what I get from my old guys or their loved ones who see what I'm giving to their dads or their husbands or whatever. I mean, God, we should all be so lucky to have that sensation run through us at any point. Like,
that's the power of self-transcendence, Zachary. That is exactly what that is. That is what you're
Mhm.
talking about. Yes.
And so like finally having tapped into that even just once, it's like it's taken on its own life. It's truly taking on a life of its own, that it's just like, and again, creature, comfort, self-centered, number one, raising my hand to that. Like, selfishly speaking, I want that feeling every day for the rest of my life.
That's exactly what I want for you too, my friend. It is the best path to vitality.
Which is it's one of those like life's most amazing, like just perplexing dichotomies, is that to get the most out of life in everything that you want, you need to absolutely devoid everything you want and give it to somebody else. It is just profoundly, it is profoundly dichotomous. And there's just no other way to put that. And because of that, yeah, there is no real static stasis of comfort, because you're always yin and yang in that. I mean, there's just, and that's kind of, my brother has it written in one of his in it's Carry the Fire material, but it's something to the fact that one of the philosophers said man is forever doomed to oscillate between this like insipid comfort and just like the vexing nature of just like of discomfort and sheer being. I need
Say
to
that
get
again. Say that again. That's very interesting. One more time, please.
So I mean, we are forever conscribed to vacillate between the two extremes of just like this paralyzing sense of comfort or this just like vexing sense of just sheer being, which is inherently just disheveled. And
Yeah,
you
and
can't,
really messy. Yes.
and human beings don't like that. We are built for, we want predictability more than anything else. That's the basis of science right there, is we
And,
want to be able to better predict and control the future. But
and yet, right, and yet doing so is sure to put us into the grave.
it, totally. And it's just one of those, it's like trying to solve every problem you can't think of. It's just manifestly humans aren't designed to, we can't think like that. It's like knowing everything. Like by design, we're imperfect.
So I want to comment on that. So you said between comfort and what'd you say? And because I want to say it in the main room, comfort and did you say growth or messy
I
or
mean, I to me, it's the word the word vexing always comes to mind. It is just vexing existence,
okay?
which
Because I'm going to talk about that.
or dynamic existence. You can
Yeah,
call it dynamic existence because there's a static comfort or there's a dynamic to actually being out there
right.
in the ether and becoming despite like the adversity of the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I want to speak to that because it's also part of logotherapy that will also help us. So I'm gonna expand on that. We have 48 seconds left here. So it's just, yeah. So if you don't have that dynamic tension, you actually are in apathy. And now you're actually, and that means you're at least treading water, or then you start to actually decline. So when you don't have that tension,
Interesting.
it's necessary for human vitality, having the dynamic tension.
I mean, just like everything else in this relative realm we live in, it is there are two poles, and the answer is usually somewhere in the middle. And that answer in the middle could not exist without two poles. I mean, that's just the nature of relativity and being okay with, like you said in that last bit, like learning to see yourself in relation to that and stepping outside of it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Hello, welcome back. All right, I see some smiles. That's good. That makes me happy to see that. Well, actually, everybody's smiling. This is fantastic. Definitely want to hear how that second round went, and I'll share a little bit about what Zachary and I were also talking about. But let me start with you, who might want to share what you did in that second round, what you got from that.
Trying to define my number, not be the 8 and jump in. So somebody else jump in so I can not. Okay, fine. I can't define it. So we had a very profound conversation, I think, about, Dan, when we talked about if you could discharge the suffering, and that was sort of the thesis of his life's work, transforming tragedy into triumph kind of a thing. If you could go back and just discharge it, just make it go away, but knowing that probably everything that's come of it on the other side of it goes away as well, which Dan called spirituality. And we both agree that it's very hard to get to spirituality or logos or meaning or whatever you want to call it without that suffering. They're almost two sides of the same coin. Would you do it? Right? And I think we both came back with no, right? And I sensed in Dan, there's a real freedom or liberation in that statement. I mean, as we talked about, like this is theoretical and it's almost a waste of time, except for I do think it just brings us back to, well, if there is meaning and there is purpose and I'm in it right now, then everything that got me here has to have served a purpose. And that to me is it felt liberating to be able to say that in both of our lives.
And then if we can build on what Dr. Dan taught us last time, then that certainly then claims the victor space versus the victim space. Much more power in that too. Dan K, anything you want to share from your exchange? Again, not necessary, but invited.
Yeah, so that was a good summary of what we touched upon. And we talked about how spirituality is the result of suffering. And you can go to religion, you're not going to go to spirituality without suffering. And those are very different things.
Mm.
And I had a doctor poison me. He was a drug addict, and he surrendered his license. 6 people reported him in a matter of a couple months. He sexually assaulted one. He was out of his mind, and it left permanent and ongoing problems with me. But when I had that experience, I also had the peak experience of my life, a spiritual experience of being one with the universe is not the proper terminology. It's identical, and they're one without a second.
Wow.
And I felt oneness with this man who permanently scarred me. And I've never since then said, why me? Why him? Why did this happen to me? And that's through spirituality.
That sounds like the true definition of freedom to me. Wow, that's really profound. Beautiful. Thank you very much for sharing. Beautiful.
Incredible. I'm happy to share, at
Please.
least from my conversation with Jared. We kind of turned the tables a little bit and used this time to focus more on his story. And I was very impressed with how he kind of framed the story using some of your remarks, Dr. Cortez, around seeing life, adding meaning to life situations or things that happen to you. And Jared, if I can share openly, like I didn't ask for permission, but can I?
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. He talked about a certain event that happened in his life where his neural systems crashed, right? And this was up until him living a life as a cop that he thought was going to be pretty, drastic, but it really ended up being for him a reboot in some ways, and turned his life around to help a lot of people from the situations he had encountered as a cop, right? His very kind of stuck ways that he wasn't proud of, and he thought in the afterlife he would be able to kind of, make up for it in some regards. But he's doing it now. So he did not have to die to live the life he wants to live and help others. Because of this reboot, he is doing that now amongst his community, amongst other police officers or first responders. So I thought that was beautiful that he is a living example of, you don't have to wait to die. I know my mom is that way. She says, when we go to heaven, that's when I'll get to be happy and be good and do everything I have to do. And I'm like, I don't know, like I don't remember anything prior to this life. I can't confirm there's going to be anything after this. So to me, Jared is a prime example of using that, adding meaning to a life situation and just completely turning it around. So I applaud him, and I think he's doing great work.
Thank you.
Jose, that was a beautiful share. Thank you very much. Just beautiful. This is the whole spirit of the community. And Jared, of Jose's read of you, right? This would be a tremendous example of just what happens when the human spirit is activated, is inspired, activated, and called into service. I think that's just incredible. And yes, I'm so happy don't have to wait to die to actually make a difference. Please. Thank you for that. And to that end, one of the things that Zach and I were talking about is, there's this thing, humans like the idea of comfort. The couch is very nice. Bonbons are very nice. But then there's this vexing messiness to life. And yet when we embrace that that tension that is there for us, that we're reaching, like all of you are, that's a necessary tension that we need for vitality. And so logotherapy teaches us that we need that tension in our lives to be what we're reaching for in order to be our best. And so all of us here on this call are reaching for something more. And that's part of what makes for the vitality. And the other thing that Zachary was talking about too in his work, in the hospice is he says, it's my description of what you were saying is so incredibly fulfilling and meaningful to get to be of service to these people that he's so grateful that he gets to do that. That is self-transcendence. That is what it looks like. That's what it feels like. That's why it works so well. That's what I want for all of you, is to have the capacity to give of yourself, and only you in the way that you can. It's the most deliciously fulfilling thing that we have as human beings available to us. And you make a difference in the world that's worthy of your one precious life. Pretty good combo. I see your note here, Dan, that you have to dash on. Did you want to say anything before you go? Oh, he's gone. Never mind. Okay, so we have 2 minutes left here. I don't know if Nancy Jean, would you like to share anything from your share or any from that beautiful wisdom of yours? Invited but not necessary.
I think Dan and I we spent most of the time talking about how beneficial it was to honor regret.
Yeah.
And talk about that. So that was most of our discussion.
It's powerful. It's powerful. Well, in our last minute together, just want to remind you, we have another session later this month. It's the third Wednesday of the month where we get together from 7 to 8 p.m. Central. That's my time zone, whatever that is for you. So welcome, please come back again for another nourishing serving of this session, Who Am I? It will be a whole different conversation as it is, because there'll be different parties and different moods and different experiences that have happened since then. So definitely want you to come back again. And please, share this with people that you think need this community and want to be part of this. B, any closing remarks before we go our separate ways?
Just don't forget, there's the curriculum that you have access to, and there's the community that you have access to, which should be pretty, at this point, self-evident and where you find it, but just find it. We'd love to see you over there.
Yeah, definitely. Please download the workbooks. Those are for you. They will catalyze your ongoing learning and transformation. So they are for you, and so is the rest of the content. So, and with that, we are at time. Really enjoyed this time with you. It's nurturing and delicious. So thank you for coming in and being part of the Meaning Academy.
Thank you.